Hi there and welcome back. You're with Terry from Bonsai Tree, and today I'm going to be working on the Swamp Cypress forest that I put together earlier this season. Let me just give it a turn or two so that you who have seen the earlier video will be able to see the marked improvement or development over just a very short space of time. If you find the following content helpful, then you can thank me by clicking the thanks button just below the video. This is the starting point a couple of months ago in spring, and I'm going to put the link into this video so that you can watch how I composed and put the forest together. As is the growing nature of this species, the Swamp Cypress, it's a very strong grower, and as you can see in just a very short space of time, it has really developed a lot of foliage from essentially what were bare trunks. Since assembling the forest, it's been growing under probably a 40% shade factor cloth, and I've been feeding it and watering it quite generously. Immediately after repotting, to stabilize the soil, I applied a surface dressing, which was a combination of sphagnum moss and live moss spores. Not only does it also encourage surface rooting, but it also allows the moss, which was mixed into the mixture, to quickly take root. And of course, all of us love to have a nice lush carpet of moss around our bonsai trees. But it really does look good with the Swamp Cypress, given the color and also the kind of environment that these trees would be growing in. Moving on to the work that needs to be done today, it's essentially going to involve some pruning as well as some application of wire just to direct the branches that have developed. As you can see, branches have developed on all sides of the trunk, which in other words are growing towards the outside as well as to the inside of the group planting. Determining which branches to eliminate at this stage is fairly straightforward and easy. Branches which are growing towards the interior of the group planting really could not survive in a real-life setting, as they would get insufficient light and would get progressively weaker as a result of being shaded from branches or by branches that are growing above them. Not only am I going to eliminate those branches growing to the interior, but I will also remove the branches that are growing too low down on the trunks as well. Swamp cypress have a tendency to produce or shoot out multiple shoots from a single point, and obviously these are going to have to be reduced to a single branch. The exception to that is in cases like this where the wire was applied to branches earlier this season and the tree has now, for some reason, possibly the fact that the wire has weakened that branch, has decided to rather put energy into the development of a new branch. And so whilst developing, or when you're in the development phase of a tree, it's always best to work with the tree and the way that it wants to grow, and rather than persist with a weaker branch, rather remove that branch and utilize the stronger branch in its place. Do also pay attention to the vertical alignment of the branches. What I mean by this is that you'd prefer or ideally want the branches to be staggered and not directly above another branch. This will ensure that the branch will be able to get sufficient sun as it develops in the future. Swamp cypress are extremely apically dominant, and so a lot of branches are going to have to be removed from the apices. In order to remove wire before it starts to bite in, you always have two options, and the one is to carefully unwind it or to cut the wire. There is always a risk when unwinding the wire that the branch might snap, so in order to mitigate that, you need to make sure that you hold the branch firmly, moving your fingers along the branch as the wire is unwound. Prior to wiring, it's a good idea to reduce the length of the branch, and the length is going to be determined by essentially the profile or the outline of the silhouette that you wish for the tree to have, and the location of that branch, if it's in the lower or upper regions. The structural branches and the apices will be kept quite short given the fact that the tree is so apically dominant. I will now move on to the next stage of wiring. Aluminium wire is going to be the most ideal material to be used for this wiring, as it's quite soft and the branches are still extremely supple. I was able to use 1mm aluminium wire in most cases. However, where there were thicker or more mature branches, I could double up on this wire. Always remember to support the branch that you're wiring so that it can't just bend freely and potentially snap. For this thicker branch, I needed to use a 1.5mm aluminium wire. It's useful to remember that when bending a branch downward, the wire should travel over the top of the branch and then continue coiling. And when bending branches up, the wire should first wrap around the bottom of the branch and then continue coiling. If your branch needs to have a downward angle, as in this example, then it's a good idea to put that bend in as soon as possible while the branch is still young. Bending a more mature branch downward creates more of a bowing effect rather than a branch that is angled down from the trunk. Pay attention also to the angles of your branches. The lowest branches on the trunk will also be the oldest, and therefore those will hang down. But as you move up the trunk and finally up into the apex, those branches in the apex will be directed towards the sunlight and will be much more vertically orientated. With trunks that are relatively straight, it doesn't make sense to have branches with tremendous movement in them. As a result, you can space the coils of your wiring much further apart than normal, and this will also lead to a savings in wire. Finally, a necessary but perhaps a slightly more boring or mundane task is to clean up the surface of the planting after you're done. Be sure to remove the bits and pieces of leaves and other parts of the tree that you might have cut off. Be on the lookout for weeds, because you'd like to arrest any weed growth while it's still young before it takes over the surface. If you found that content helpful and you'd like to thank me for it, please do so now by clicking the thanks button just below the video. Work on this group planting for today is now completed. This group planting is nevertheless extremely immature. However, in only just a few months, we have very many more branches to work with. If I continue to water and fertilize generously, this species is going to reward me with a lot more growth. Remember that in the early phases of the development of a forest, or any other tree for that matter, you want to keep many more branches than you ultimately might keep. However, this gives you options. The wire that I've applied today will probably remain on the tree for another 2 or 3 months, depending on the subsequent growth. However, at that point in time, I need to be aware of or cautious of wire bite, and be sure to remove the wire just before it starts or just as it starts to bite in. I'm very pleased with the development in such a short time of this group planting, and I'm very confident that in as little as 5 or so years, I'm really going to be able to appreciate it. Well, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you haven't done so, please do like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you and take care. Till next time, goodbye.